All right, it's still Good Morning Nigeria, live on the network service of the NTA. And as a prompt for our conversation this morning, let's quickly take a look at this background reports put together by Ibrahim Gunda.
The Ministry of Interior is revolutionizing activities of agencies under its supervision to align with the President's Renewed Hope agenda. The Nigerian Immigration Service, for instance, saw the introduction of reforms for international passport to eliminate corruption and promote convenience. Others are investment in technology and innovation to reduce bottleneck, hindering passport processing and enhancing national security, among others. The Minister of Interior's biggest imprint is in border management, leading to introduction of e-gates at airports and e-borders at national borders. The Nigerian Correctional Service witnessed cases of jailbreak and challenges of feeding inmates, as well as congestion, prompting ongoing renovation of some correctional facilities, as well as improvement in feeding of inmates, among others. The Nigerian Security and Civil Defense Corps and Nigerian Fire Service also witnessed a new approach in protecting national assets. Specialized focus on preventing pipeline vandalism and safe school initiative. What is the level of implementation of these reforms? What is the future plan and how impactful has it been? These and more will be some of the questions guests on Good Morning Nigeria will find answers to on the program.
All right, many thanks, Ibrahim Bello Gunda, for that background report. And to begin our conversation, let me introduce here in the studio, and for the second time, Dr. Olubunmi Tunjojo, Minister of Interior. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Let me also introduce Kemi Nana Nandap, Comptroller General, Nigeria Immigration Service. Perhaps the fourth female Comptroller General of the Nigeria Immigration Service. I remember the Honorable Minister saying that women in the service would no longer complain because we've had a succession of women now.
Sure.
It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you for having me.
Honorable Minister, let's...
Before we begin the conversation, Director.
I'm sorry. And she's just here.
I'd also like to introduce Dr. Uju Agomo, the Executive Director of Prisoners Rehabilitation and Welfare Action, POWER. Many thanks for joining us, Doctor.
Thank you. Thank you indeed for having me.
All right. It's also important to mention that she's a member, United Nations Subcommittee on Prevention of Torture, Associate Professor of Criminology and Security Studies, Christian University, Abeokuta. Many thanks once again, ma'am, for joining us.
Thank you.
All right, let's now begin. Honorable Minister, it's been a year plus of working in the Ministry of Interior. What have been your biggest achievements, you would say? And along the line, what have been the major challenges? Of course, how easy you've come with unconventional ways of doing things, new ways of doing it. How easy has it been to drive your vision, into your team to get the results that you have achieved?
Well, thank you very much, and it's nice seeing you again. Let me say this very clearly, that being Minister of Interior under the able leadership of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has been very interesting, and interesting in the sense of the fact that we have a president who gives that free hand for you to work. I mean, the free hand that allows you to be creative, that allows you to be innovative, and that allows you to be able to implement key reforms, And I'll tell you that the biggest achievement for me is being the fact that we've been able to, that the renewed hope agenda of the president has been, we've been able to entrench it in terms of our workings in the Ministry of Interior and our agencies. Do not forget that the Ministry of Interior deals with all Nigerians, because border management, border control, these are issues that deals with Nigerians. And do not also forget that correctional service reforms is also very key in terms of our justice system, and of course the Nigerian Civil Security and Civil Defense Corps is also at the heart of the entrenchment of internal security mechanisms, especially critical national asset, and of course, and also the Federal Fire Service. So basically, the ministry deals with everyday Nigerians, deals with the yearnings of Nigerians, and I'll tell you that in the last 1 year, God has helped us, with the support of Mr. President, to be able to achieve almost all the things that we highlighted, that we planned to do within the first 12 months, in office. And also, we've been so lucky to be able to have very wonderful officers, working with us, and of course, core professionals. I'll tell you, for instance, in the issue of the correctional service, which is an area where we had a lot of issues, because I think the problems there, very endemic. It's been there for so many years. But with the committee that we've been able to set up, and Dr. Uju, who is on the United Nations list as one of the brains behind correctional service reforms all over the world, has graciously accepted to be the secretary of the committee, and we've been able to bring the best of minds, together to be able, small committee, because we don't want a big committee, we don't want a large system such that control becomes impossible. We want people that will be able to, technical, professional people, that will be able to give us results, because we want, so just as we've been able to solve the passport problem once and for all, we want to be able to solve the correctional issues once and for all, so that it's not about building strong individuals, it's about building strong institutions, so that even if tomorrow I'm not here in Interior, even if after President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's administration, by the grace of God, the correctional service will have been put on the right track, of performance. So that's part of what we're doing. So basically, to answer your question, I think that our biggest achievement so far is being able to build strong institutions, across board, because that's what is important. In the Nigerian Immigration Service, on the 1st of November, the contactless passport, biometric passport application system goes live. We'll start in Canada, because we're starting with Canada on the 1st, Then on the 15th, we'll be able to go to the UK, the US, and Italy. Then on the 1st of December, it goes live everywhere, even in Nigeria. So it means that the era when you need to even go to immigration office for biometric capture and whatever, you have to cancel a day's job, you have to inconvenience yourself, leave Abuja, central area, or Garki to Soka, or you are in London, you are in Wolverhampton or in Birmingham, you have to travel to London, you are in Vancouver, you have to fly hours to get to Ottawa. All those, those days of inconveniences are gone. Because I always tell people, this is 2024. This is not 1904. This is 2024, the era of technology. So those era, finally, that which to me is like the last stage of our passport reform system. Don't forget that when we started, we cleared the backlog. That was the first one, to over 200,000. We said, okay, let's clear that. That's the short term, Then the midterm was to bring integrity into our passport and travel document, which was what led us to the PKI, the PKD, where Nigerian passport security is now, our passport security is now uploaded on a global directory of ICAO all over the world. So it means that that travel document of Nigeria can be verified, can be authenticated anywhere in the world. So the security feature you see in an American passport, the security feature you see in a Canadian passport, the security feature you see in the Chinese passport is what you get in a Nigerian passport. So we've been able to build that level of trust of the global community, in terms of our passport system. And of course, working through the chain, automating the whole application process. And the final stage for us is, especially those in diaspora, you need to see the pain. So now, by November 1, that ends. So we know that, okay, even beyond President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's administration, the passport system has come to stay. It is that kind of mentality, that kind of vision that we have for the correctional center. So that by the time we're done with the correctional centers, no matter who comes as CG, no matter who comes as minister, no matter who comes as president in the future, we will know that we have a system that can withstand, any government. So basically, it's about building strong institutions. So to wrap it up, I'll say this: our biggest achievement has been obviously building strong institutions in line with the Renewed Hope agenda of Mr. President. And of course, you asked about the issue And I mean, the biggest challenge, and I'll tell you, I've not really had too much of a challenge, and I'll tell you why. Because with all due respect, I have a president who supports innovation. I mean, all you need to do is to tell him this is this is what you want to do, and he gives you ideas. He balances your views. He loves to engage. He engages you intellectually, like what some people call intellectual intercourse. He likes to have that argument with you. He discusses with you, and once you're speaking sense, the president gives you the nod to go ahead. And once you go ahead, he protects you. Making sure you are doing the right thing. So we have been so fortunate. I will say that. So because of that, I wouldn't be able to say, oh, this has been a challenge or this has not been a challenge. It's about thinking of the idea, conceiving the idea, nurturing the idea, and implementing the idea, and making sure the idea works for the people.
Thank you
of this
very
great
much,
country.
Honorable Minister, for your opening comments. Indeed, you have spoken well, and we see the work that you've been doing in your ministry. You talked about building strong institutions, and that's one aspect Nigerians really, would want to see, just not just in the ministry, but of course across the board. But let's be specific now. You talked about the correctional services, specifically building strong institutions and, making a correctional service what it should be like. There's an investigation that reveals that in the last 3 years, we've had more jailbreaks than ever. In fact, the Senate President said with a change of name, there have been more jailbreaks than when it was the Nigeria Prison Service. And the reports reveals that about 6,000 inmates have escaped, in the course of the series of jailbreaks we've had in the country. Only about 1,000 have been recaptured, meaning that over 5,000 are still on the run. I want to know, in terms of building strong institutions, what exactly are you doing about the correctional service in specifics now? And then what is the plan about recapturing or those inmates who are on the run at the moment?
Okay, thank you very much. I don't know the source of your data, and I will be very specific on that because I know since President Bola Ahmed Tinubu came on board in 2023, we've had only 2, to the best of my knowledge. And those 2 were due to forces beyond the control of the service at those particular points in time. Number 1 was the one that happened in Suleja, and the Suleja was due to force majeure. I mean, the wall, came down because that correctional center was actually built, I think, if I'm not wrong, I think it was 1914. Yes, the correctional center was built in 1914. And I tell you this, and I'm a man that do not, I say my mind at every point in time. I'm an objective person. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu did not become president in 1914, and he became president probably 109 years after when that particular correctional center was built. So the problems, that was due to issue of wind and whatever, the wall came down and etc. And the second one was the one that happened in Maiduguri, which was due to the flood. And I tell you, I was there myself. The next day it happened, I was there. And I saw the level of the flood. And of course, you need to be there. I mean, that could happen anywhere in the world. That's the truth. Because we saw a flood that was over all the structures, not just the correctional center. The level of the flood was even beyond. It was beyond human height level. And so that was an issue, was a force majeure. We've not had jail attacks. There's a difference between a jail attack and a jailbreak. They are 2 different things. So if you're talking about, I don't want us to mix data. You understand what I mean? It's very key that we understand it, that under this government, we've done our best. There's so many strategies we've used, I cannot say here, in terms of managing the whole issues of jail attack, jailbreak, and etc. And it has worked so far with cooperation from the DSS, from the Nigerian Army, from civil defense, from immigration, and a lot. We hold meetings Saturdays, Sundays. Sundays we go to the office just to strategize when we have alerts, and we do a lot of things behind the scenes. So we have been able to handle that. So when they talk about, as if it has never been as worse as this, no, that's not true. Let us be objective for once. So that's that about that. And when you speak about capturing people, as much as I do not like to you know, I must say this very clearly. When we came on board, there was this program we saw that they called Correctional Information Management System. And we realized that this is era of technology. When the whole issue happened in Suleja, we realized that a lot of these people, you know, we had problems. We had to work like a week or 2 weeks extra to be able to get the data of these people. I mean, the biometrics and etc. We had to go get the paper, NIMSI. We had to go to NIMSI, what's it called, to the bank, to road safety, immigration, a lot of just to get data of these people. Within that time, it's easy. I mean, some of these escapees could have as well, you know, escaped. And immediately what we did is that, listen, there is no crime in making mistake. But the issue is never make the mistake a habit. Don't ever let it repeat itself. And we looked around the whole system and what this government has been able to do. And that is why you saw the difference in terms of the response time in Maiduguri and Suleja, the two different things. In Maiduguri, in Suleja, it took us couple of days, you know, like a week or so to come out on whatever with data and information sharing. But when it happened in Maiduguri, within 24 hours, within 24 hours, we were able to share information, data, biometric, pictures, details, and everything with all other sister agencies, you know. And that has led us to the recapture of a lot of people. I can't tell you the exact number as I sit now, you know, but a lot of people had been recaptured, you know, because we've operationalized the information management system. And as I tell you today, there is no inmate, either you are waiting trial or whatever, that is not enrolled on our system. So we have a robust technological solution now. You know, before it was what we saw, I mean, prior to now, what we had prior to this time was more in name, you know. But we've been able to operationalize it. We've been able to constantly update it. And as I tell you, it's real time. So building on this, leveraging on the foundation that we have built now, it means that we can only get better. So as I said, you see, every nation is an evolving entity. We have to always understand that, you know. You do not expect Eldorado overnight. You know, it's the same thing in correctional, it's the same thing in Nigerian Immigration Service, it's the same thing in fire service or any other agency of government, you know. Even America is still evolving, you know. The United Kingdom is still evolving. But the bottom line is we should be honest enough to admit our mistakes when we make mistakes and be bold and audacious enough to be able to correct these mistakes and make sure that these mistakes do not turn to habit, which is what this government is doing. So in the real sense of it, I want to assure you that on the issue of recapturing, on the issue of there's a lot that is going on with that regard. And also, this committee, you know, headed by the permanent secretary, of which Dr. Uju is the secretary, is going to bring us lasting solutions to a lot of these issues. You know, issue of overcrowding, decongestions, even welfare of inmates, relocation of prisons, of correctional centers that be eaten up by urbanization, and a lot of issues. It's going to be an all-encompassing one. The public, there's going to be, I think she told me this morning that I think by December, they will bring out the first public hearing, you know, to get opinions of people and be able to come up with a robust plan. And with what this government has done in immigration service and what we've done, even with the correctional service, you Nigerians can trust this government that when we put our hand on the plow, there is no going back.
All right. Honourable Minister, thank you very much. You will agree that on set we are outnumbered by the women. So before they come for my head, let me get to the Controller General of Immigration. Now, a lot of what the Ministry of Interior in this administration has achieved rests in the Nigerian Immigration Service. And I talk with reference to the e-borders, the e-gates, the passport reforms, and all of it. But the feelers, and this is the opinion of many, that there is resistance to, going contactless, resistance to, limiting human contact. Of course, because it doesn't favor certain people down the line. How are you dealing with this to ensure that everybody falls in line with the vision of the minister, and of course yours, which I know is not different from his? How are you dealing with this to ensure that you achieve the best results that you possibly can in this regard?
Thank you very much. First of all, let me say that opinion was before, not what is obtainable now. This is because any system, no matter what kind of system it is, if you do not understand it, if you don't know what it's all about, it's usually, it's obvious that there'll be resistance or there'll be confusion. So that's what we've tried to understand and explain. We've done a lot of engagement with our officers, we've done a lot of sensitization, we've done a lot of training. Right now we're even training, we've trained over 250 officers regarding this new deployment of technology that we've done. And also even the passport innovations we've done. So a lot depends on training and retraining, which is what we're doing presently. And the officers know that it's the benefit of not just Nigerians, but also ourselves as well, because it makes our job easier, it makes verification easier, it makes our job, it takes us to another level, and they're all very eager and willing to work with this. So I think that was before we started the sensitization and the advocacy to them. And a lot of training has gone into that, and I think everyone is on board.
Fantastic. CG, kudos. A lot of Nigerians are excited about the reforms in the immigration service. But of course, one issue that is putting a lot of strain in the pockets of Nigerians will be the price of the passport. September, you increased the price of the passport, the 32-page, from 35,000 to 50,000, and the 64 pages was increased from 75,000 to 100,000 naira. Okay, so I know that I did see a report from the Immigration Service as to why the increase had to be done, but I mean, considering the present economic realities, a lot of Nigerians are saying, well, this is above what they can afford. What's your take really about why there should be an increase in the price at this time?
Thank you very much. Passport production is dollar denominated. We don't produce it in Nigeria. We bring it from outside the country. So everything we do is based on the dollar rate. And as it is now, we pay taxes, which is what we do for Nigerians. And as an institution, I don't think it's right for us to pay taxes for people. So what we're saying is, listen, this price is what we started with over, 15, 16 years ago, when the dollar rate was, 300 or 400, and it's the same rate we're still keeping as at now that the dollar is about 1,600. So as it is, we are supplementing. We are, using our own money to pay for all the, the booklets we're buying and everything. So it's not as if we're insensitive to Nigerians. It's just that it's not sustainable.
But is there a limitation at the moment as to why the passports cannot be produced in Nigeria, just so that this dollar issue would be taken out of the
Like the minister said, this is what we're trying to do in terms of institutionalizing, institutions in Nigeria, and also building infrastructures. That's one of the things we're trying to do as well. It's a work in progress. Right now, we're also doing our personalization structure in the service headquarters. So a lot of things are being done in terms of how we can domesticate production of passport booklets. But it's not something that can happen overnight. It has to be a process, a procedure, which, of course, this administration has been gracious enough to look into. We've had lots of people coming back and forth. We've been going in terms of how do we domesticate this issue. And it's a work in progress.
I had wanted to, but since we are still on the passport issue, before we get to reforms in the correctional service, the CG did say, well, it's a price that has been there for quite a while, but I do know that the last 1 year, we've had, the cost of passport increase from 25 to 35 and then to 50. Given the circumstance, yes, her explanation is noted, but given the circumstance, Is this justifiable, though, given the circumstances that Nigerians have found themselves at this time?
Well, thank you so much. Let me say this very clearly. There are certain things I sincerely believe are not meant to be subsidized. Personal opinion, not as Minister of Interior. Please, let's get this straight. I'm speaking as Bomitun Jojo now. I sincerely think that as a country, we can't be subsidizing passport. What can we do is to create options that, okay, if you want to travel and you're not traveling abroad and you want to travel within ECOWAS, within ECOWAS sub-region, there should be a cheaper alternative, you know, because it might not really make sense that if your aim is not to go to Europe, to go to Asia, East Africa, whatever, if you're just maybe you're moving from Nigeria to Niger, Nigeria, or you're moving from Nigeria, you know,
Ghana.
to Ghana and etc. There should be a cheaper alternative, you know. And what did we do? That's the ECOWAS card. And you need to get to immigration office. We have about a 2 or 3 story building completed, all facilities installed, and the ECOWAS card is, it's going to be available at an extremely cheaper rate, because the simple truth is, as CG rightly said, passport is dollar denominated. That's the truth. And when you look, I don't like to compare Nigeria with other countries. It might not be what I really like to do, but when you look at it realistically, you will realize that just do a Google search. You will realize that Nigeria has arguably one of the cheapest passports in the world. I'm telling you. Even in Africa, Google it. Anywhere in the world, Nigerian passport is still one of, because we're very considerate. Immigration is not making profit. We don't see passport as a profit-making venture. But the scenario whereby we import passport, why must government be subsidizing passports? I don't think that is right. And when you speak about production, that why are we not producing the book? Get it straight. We personalize here. What we are talking about is the production of the raw booklet. That's what we're talking about, because I've always had people misconceive that. There's a lot of misconceptions saying, oh, Nigerian passport is printed up. There's a difference between passport production and passport personalization. The production of the raw booklet is just like it's like book, you know, that it doesn't carry anything until it is personalized. The production, it's not only Nigeria. For now, we have to look at cost-benefit analysis. What is the cost of producing in Nigeria at the moment, and what is the cost of importing? Can we, at this, and it's not what we can achieve, the domestication is not what we can achieve in 6 months. That's the truth. It's not what is readily that it can be achieved within 6 months. It's a process. And we're actually at the moment going through that.
But are you willing to give us a timeline?
No, I wouldn't be able, because I wouldn't be specific, because I will tell you why. When I give my word, I try to keep it, you know, because that's what this government is about. We will never promise you what we will not do, and we will never give you a timeline that will be impossible to achieve. But the simple truth is that a lot of countries, even UK itself, does UK produces its booklet? Ask, you can Google it. You have to ask how many of even the developed countries even produce their booklet, because you know, so it's something that we have to look at the economics behind it and look at the comparative advantage, job creation, national pride, and we weigh you know, and once we do that, we now roll out our domestication plan, you know, to say, okay, in the short term, this is what we'll do. In the long term, this is what we'll do. So when we're done with that, then we'll come back to Nigeria. But what I want to assure you, I don't think this is what we should even really be talking so much about, because immigration service has been very, very reasonable in terms of how much the passport goes for now. The price of, everything is, there is a bit of inflation, you know, across board, and we cannot expect government, you know, to be subsidizing passports. And how many people? We produce about 2 million passports a year. That is 2 out of 200 and something million people. So my own question as a Nigerian, not as Minister of Interior, let's get this straight. As a Nigerian now, because I'm talking in my capacity as a Nigerian now, not as Minister. If we produce 2 million passports out of 200 and something million people, that is 0.5%. So why must government? When I became Minister of Interior, I inherited debt of over 20-something billion in passports. And we've been trying to pay, because we were on, the money we were getting from passport was lower, was lesser than even the production cost. So how can government be subsidizing to the tune of about 40, 50 billion a year for 0.5%, of the population? I don't think that is right.
Thank you so
I think if that sort of expenditure will come on the part of government, that sort of expenditure can go into education, as Mr. President will tell you. That can go into healthcare. That can go into issues that will affect the average and all Nigerians, not to subsidize over 50 billion. So what we are doing now is that we're not making profit. But what we are saying is we're not here, not that we're not, I won't just use the word we're not making profit, because I know there are fact checkers, people that will go and check now, and say, I'm not saying we're not, but what I'm saying is that even the headroom that we put is in case if tomorrow there is slight increase in exchange rate, we are not coming back again to say we are increasing almost
thank
immediately.
you. Honorable Minister Olumbumi Tunji-Ojo, we'll pause you here. Let's get to Dr. Agomo now and talk about the correctional service. We know that's your core area. The Honorable Minister was speaking a while ago and talked about inflation. When you talk about inflation, of course, food prices, number one hit in all of that. We know that the federal government recently increased the amount spent to feed inmates from 750 naira to 1,250 naira just recently. A lot of people say that's inadequate. And there are reports here and there. I read a report recently that says that some inmates are malnourished, some are dying as a result of starvation. There are also reports about maltreatment within the correctional service. I want you to tell me if these facts are true, because not every one of us has the access into the correctional facility to know what goes on in there. But these are the reports that we have, that there's also the issue of maltreatment resulting in deaths of inmates and all of that. And then the worrisome one is the fact that when inmates pass on, their relatives are not consulted, or rather they don't give consent for the burial and they go ahead to bury and all of that. So I want you to tell us the state of the correctional facilities that we have in this country. Are these facts, are these reports accurate? What is the treatment like for an inmate in the Nigeria Correctional Service today?
Okay, thank you very much. There's quite a whole lot of issues that you've brought to the table. I think the first thing I would like to say, so that we don't miss it, was the very first point you started discussing with the Honorable Minister in terms of security. And all I would add to the points that the Honorable Minister made is that as a people, we need to be really intentional in terms of implementing our laws. Okay? So sometimes you have very, very important, very, very progressive, very, very innovative provisions in the laws, just like what you have in the Nigerian Correctional Service Act of 2019. But implementation, full implementation becomes a challenge. So in terms of dealing with the issue of around issue of security in terms of correctional service, what I will recommend is that we try to have effective implementation of Section 28 of the Nigerian Correctional Service Act 2019, both subsection 1 to 3. And that is very detailed in terms of what needs to happen in relation to the different classification of correctional centers. Is very key, okay? And part of that is also all of the major things that the Honorable Minister mentioned. So I would use that to loop into the questions that you asked. And I think that fundamentally, the major problem is that people do not fully understand the persons, the kind of people who are in custody. And I think if we do, our response to how we get people into custody and the duration they stay in custody becomes different. So first is and I always try to make sure that I make this point any time I have opportunity to speak, is to understand that there are people who are in custody who are innocent. There are people who are there who are minor offenders. There are people who are there who are serious offenders. The reason is that a lot of the burden that you have within the custodial center also has to do with the population too. So being able to understand that when you are locking persons more than what the designated capacity of that facility is, it becomes challenge. If there is a challenge in terms of the infrastructure in those places, there is challenge in terms of the time that you can give due attention to proper treatment and processing of the inmates within those correctional centers. So I will take the issues one by one. You raised the issue of food. We just finished talking about inflation. So if you think about what amount of food and what they call gas, which is basically the wood and gas that they use in cooking, that 1,250 would have purchased, or that 700 and something would have purchased. I need us to also factor into this the fact that there is a business dimension to it, because there are contractors who win the awards. Now, when you now know that there are contractors, you begin to ask yourself, what will be the margin of profit from the contractor? So ab initio, the amount is not sufficient. You know, just take to 1,250 and ask yourself how much of this can feed you for the whole of the day, okay? Now, you will now ask yourself, when you put the margin of the contractors. But the major question is also to understand that there need to be checks. What is the process itself? So the whole onboarding of that process becomes challenging. And let me ask you, when you look at food, the basic thing you would need is that if you can produce what you eat, it becomes very helpful. A lot of countries are making sure that they are becoming full substance within the correctional center. And I'll give you two examples. For example, in Zambia, all of the vegetables that are fed, that inmates in Zambia feed, are produced by the inmates in Zambia. Maize meal, which is another staple food, you know, that they use. At the time I had went to assess the correctional centers in that country, I found that at that point, they were already 85% subsistence on maize meal. In Nigeria, we have farm centers. The question is, how can we radicalize what we have to ensure that we begin to produce what we feed? That's one level. And then also the other issues about oversight, to ensure that the quality, the nutritional value, the quality and the size, is the quantity and the quality of food is adequate for the funds that are also being kept there. So you need to completely reform the whole process. So yes, there are inmates that die, and
as a result of malnutrition?
For different reasons. And I give you a very simple example. And this is, I mean, I don't know whether you are aware that Prawa is going to be 30 years this year. And so I'm going to give you some history. So it's to tell you that it didn't just start now. I recall several years back, and this I am talking about more than 15 years, 20 years ago. There was a time that inmates were dying like this, especially in the medium security correctional centers. I became curious. So we did an analysis of all of the deaths. So we found out that the deaths were happening like a lot, 5 days, and then they would drop. It looks like it stabilizes, and it happens again. And when we did analysis, we found out that a lot of the deaths were happening during the rainy season. This was a long time ago. So what happened? We became very worried, and we realized that they felt at that point, because they started realizing that they were not having enough intake of proteins. So the welfare officer, God bless her, so she's dead now, Mrs. Bridget Opia in Medium, began to call religious bodies to begin to bring soya beans. So soya beans were now turned into soya beans drinks. You know, they found out that those who were in the sick bay were being given and they were getting well, but the other ones that were in the south were now getting sick. So they now made sure that the soya bean drink was being given to every of the inmates. That model was discussed with cook warders who came for a training in the training institution there at that time, later on. And we found out that they started doing this in different parts of the country. One day, one of them saw me in one of the correctional centers in the southeast, and he said to me that he went back after that training and started adding soya beans into the soup that they were eating. And that brought down the death rate. So what we realized that because of the rainy season, because the dam cells became damp, so again, there is a need for checks and balances. You need to also be able to analyze it, like the Honorable Minister said when he was talking. That's also part of the thing that we need to be looked at. But again, you remember that I have said something about population. Correctional Center is really there to be able to check everything that you see. Part of what triggers it is from the beginning, from the police, law enforcement, to the judiciary, and down. And that was why I took time to explain to you the 3 categories of persons. So when you see people who have no reason being in custody, what it then means, why are they there? Because of course that population has implication in the food, on the food, but the point is that if an innocent person is kept in custody, 1 hour there can make the person to get more contact with criminal, more criminalized individuals that will actually put the person back into a more dangerous pathway going forward. So you see that connection. Those who are minor offenders, why are they there when you have a whole part 2 of the Nigerian Correctional Act of 2019 talking about non-custodial measures? So we have to be intentional in terms of how we truly ensure that it is only using custodial center as a very last resort. So the judiciary, the law enforcement agencies must do the needful, because what they are doing is actually affecting the security of the country. If the correctional facility is overburdened by, and that's one thing we know, when you talk about population, people need to understand what kind of population. The bulk of the people there, over 70%, are those who have not been convicted. And when an inmate is not convicted, it's very tense. He wants to go to court. So there's a lot of transactional things that happen. It's very difficult to actually provide proper regime structure within the custodial center.
Okay.
There are a whole section of Section 10 of the Nigerian Correctional Service Act of 2019 that tells you exactly what needs to be done day to day. Risk assessments of every inmate that comes in. From the day one they come in, you have the needs and risk assessment and plan the regime of that person, including where the person is staying in custody, along the risks that that person portrays.
So why does it seem that this Nigerian Correctional Service Act of 2019, is impossible to implement? Because 2019 is 5 years now.
Yes.
Why is it not implementable?
That is the challenge. And I believe that if we can be intentional on this, it will go a long way. Part of that is also about the will. Look at the non-custodial measures. I think that this is one of the best things the country could do for itself. Because once you strengthen that, and from what I have heard, unless I stand to be corrected, there is no funding that have gone to the implementation of non-custodial measures. But meanwhile, non-custodial measures implementation is something that should make everyone happy, because it will help to save costs. It will help to make the community safer. And you may ask me why and how. Remember that if somebody has been put in custody and the court says you are leaving in 3 years or whatever, of course, when they calculate the remission, you are going to be left slightly earlier than the three calendar year. Yeah. But the point here is that even if the custodial officer find out that you yourself you have not been reformed, you are going to go back and cause problem, they can't stop you. They will open the date for you to go, because that is what the court have decided, that you have finished your term.
So technically, the correctional center is not correcting people.
No, but there's a point I'm trying to make here. The point I'm trying to make here is that by looping in the non-custodial officers, it means that in the community, so you play 3 roles. First, the non-custodial officer can also begin, and that's another issue that can also be discussed, is they also begin to take a role whereby you look at signs that can prevent offending. You don't wait for the offending to come. So you see people who are dropped out of school, people who are using drugs or whatever. So you do whatever you need to do, families of people who are in custodial centers, to be able to bring certain certainty to prevent. Secondly, when the person is now in custody, the people in custody will take care, isn't it? When the person comes out, the non-custodial officer follows through. But bearing in mind that if, for example, the person has found to be the kind of person that will benefit from non-custodial application, non-custodial measures, as stated under Section 37 sub 1 of the Nigerian Correctional Service Act, whether it's community service, whether it's probation, whether it's parole, whether it's restorative justice, and all the rest of them, all of those, with the exception of parole, will be supposed to be people who have not entered the custodial center. But what that means is that by effectively supporting this, when the person has been released, somebody's providing supervision.
Thank you very much, Dr. Agomo. I'll pause you. I have more questions for you, about the custodial center. But let me get to the Honorable Minister now, because Dr. Agomo has talked about the issue of overcrowding. I'll quickly read out the statistics to you. As at September 3rd, the statistics shows that we have 82,831 males, 1,920 females in our correctional facilities. 57,750 are awaiting trials, while we have 21,900 convicted and 1,501 life sentences. This is according to statistics. I want to quote you. In June, you said that this is specifically now to Kefi Medium Security Custodial Center. You said that there were 750 inmates at that center, which has the capacity to hold just 340 inmates. Now, out of the 750 inmates, 605 are awaiting trial. I want to know. She has said that that's the reason why feeding is insufficient, while maltreatment is high, why, I mean, so many factors. And of course, some of these people eventually come out to society again, and they cause more problems because of all these issues they have faced in the custodial centers. What exactly is the ministry doing? I agree that it's not totally, it doesn't rest with the Ministry of Interior or the custodial centers alone. Of course, judiciary has a role to play. But what are you doing, considering the fact that you're the ones handling these people and bearing the brunt of, the whole situation?
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. Let me say this very clearly. Is there a problem? Yes, there is a problem. And do we accept that there are issues? Yes, we do. And the question now is, are we ready to make the necessary reforms? Yes, that's what exactly we're doing. These problems were inherited, but as we say, government is in continuum. Like the president always says, you inherit assets, you inherit liabilities. I mean, that's what government is about. But for us to sit here and say there's just going to be like a magic wand, it's not going to happen. It's a process, okay? And that's why when we came on board, you realize that we decongested, and that figure, we reduced it by 5%, by virtue of raising funds through the private sector for offenders, fines and penalties. We're able to do that, and we reduced that by about 5%. And by doing that, we save government of about 1 billion naira annually in terms of feeding. Okay, we're able to do that. But we understood from day one that was like a short-term thing. That's not a sustainable thing. It's not what we can be doing every now and then. We have to talk about the institution, building a bigger institution, a better, a more solid institution. And that's what we're doing. And that's what led us to the committee that was set up. We want to take our time. We are pending when the decision of the committee will come to reality. There will be fruition of the effort. We're doing our audits, we're putting our officers in check, and we're making sure that we're renovating correctional centers. If you get to Kuje Correctional Center, you will see the difference. Even if you go to the one in Nasarawa, Kefi, you'll see there. And so many other places, we're doing a lot of renovations, at least facelift, and to give our people better facilities, better conditions in the correctional centers. There's a lot we're doing in that regard. But as we said, that is not the main solution. The main solution is to set up and look at the core issues. What are the issues? What are the factors? I personally believe that non-custodial measure is at the center of our solution. I personally believe that. For instance, I'll give you an example. When you look at it, you see that about 70% or above are awaiting trials, And for me, and out of that 70-something percent, I tell you, more than 60% are non-violent awaiting trials. So I personally do not understand why a non-violent awaiting trial, maybe for loitering, for, small offenses, traffic, different offenses, small things, you lock them in Kuje prison, pending when, I sincerely think that if we have non-custodial measures, those people that are still awaiting trial and are non-violent, will not be locked up with hardened criminals, where somebody goes, and that's the reason why you see the rate of recidivism is so high. You understand that people go into correctional center today for stealing yam. The next time he goes into correctional center is for stealing car. The next time he goes after that is for carrying gun. The next one is terrorism. So people get hardened more and more when they go, because we have to build a correctional system that is correctional, that is transformational, and of course that is rehabilitatory. Those are the things that we must look at. So in designing this, the non-custodial is at the center of it, because do not forget that the main difference between the Prison Service Act and the Correctional Service Act is this issue of non-custodial. And it's the importation of the non-custodial is what has changed the name for prisons, which is a place of incarceration, to correctional, a place of transformation and rehabilitation, a place of hope, a place where someone can actually go and get better. So we must now sit down and look at this non-custodial, and I have told Nigeria Correctional Service that in their 2025 budget, the idea of not putting any budget line in for non-custodial is not going to work for me, because we realized that when I came on board, we've seen all their budgets since 2019. I don't think they've ever, provided a funding line, by themselves. And the simple truth is, if government says, submit your budget proposal, it is what you submit to government. You're supposed to do your needs assessment. It's not the president that will come and do your needs assessment. As an agency, you do your needs assessment, you submit it to government. Upon that, the government looks at it, justifiably sends it to National Assembly for the appropriation process. So I have given that instruction already, that for 2025 budget, that non-custodial must be given reasonable allocation of resources, because that is the way forward, okay? That is because when these correctional centers were built, the question we should ask ourselves is, what was the plan? These correctional centers were built probably to take about 40,000 people. Today we have 80-something thousand people. So there's overcrowding. You need to get to Ikoyi in Lagos. You need to see. You need to get to Port Harcourt. So, but the simple truth is, these are structures. These are not policies. If it's a policy, you can issue policy overnight. But structures, if you want to build a real correctional center that will accommodate the 2,000 and something people in Port Harcourt, it's going to take you how many months? More than a year, roughly 2 years of solid work.
So why
to be able to do that?
Why
so
that is capacity is not working? Because the 3,000 capacities have been on ground for quite a while.
Don't say that. You see, Victor, I will advise that we fact check, all right, before we make certain assertions. The 3,000 capacity, to the best of my knowledge, the only one that's been completed is the one in Kano.
I'm aware.
It's only the Kano that is actually, and it's actually working. I was there. I was in Kano earlier this year. I saw people are there, and of course the other ones are. But what I'm even telling you is that even before we as a country sit down and start thinking of incarceration as a first resort, nobody does that. Incarceration is supposed to be the last resort. So the major thing in our review system, in our reform system, is for us to be able to sit down and say, hey, what is our transformation? What's our correction? What's our rehabilitation plan? At the end of that rehabilitation plan is incarceration, not at the beginning. And that is the reform. That's what we're trying to do within the next 1 year. So what I just want to tell you is that we are focused. We know what we need to do. We know what we have to do to be able to handle some of this. And we cannot do it just as Ministry of Interior. We have to work with Ministry of Justice. We have to work with the police. We have to work with judiciary. We have to work with all the government agencies and organs.
I was going to come there, because I know that even if you build 10,000 capacity in all the geopolitical
that
zones,
is my problem. Hold on, Victor. Hold on, Victor. That is exactly what I am saying. You're still repeating what I'm not comfortable with you repeating.
All right.
Hold on.
Let's pause for a break.
I need to land on this point.
Just a moment.
Just a second. Is this? It's not about we building the incarceration centers. It's about the rehabilitation correctional plan. It's a whole chain. And we are putting incarceration at the front rather than at the last resort. And that is where we've gotten it wrong.
Valid point.
The Bola Ahmed Tinubu's administration is about reversing that trend and making sure that the proper chain is followed and adhered to in line with global best practice.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. Let's quickly pause for a break now. When we come back, the conversation continues. Stay with us.
All right, thanks for staying with us. This is Good Morning Nigeria, and we've been discussing the whole gamut of reforms in the Ministry of Interior. But let me get to the Controller General of Immigration now. Well, we've seen e-gates, we've seen e-borders. I've also heard people say it's all a fizzy. But how effective, what has changed in terms of border security, border management since the installation of e-gates, e-borders?
Thank you very much. You know, initially, what we had was just lines across the borders where people just come in and we take your details and everything. But now we have a border management information system, the MIDAS, where before you come in, we take your biometrics and, you know, we profile you and you come in. And then again, we've taken it a step further where we have all our, most of, let me not say all, but over 100 crossing points now. We have our IVS, which is the Intelligent Video System. What that does is, some kilometers before you coming in, these are the land borders, of course, you're recorded, you know, we see who's coming in, who's not coming in. So that's one system, and it's linked directly to our command and control at the service headquarters. So what that does is we have real-time information, 24/7, every day, of whoever is coming in or going out of our borders. So that is a whole different level in terms of border control. And then we go to the e-gate. The e-gate is a system where, whether Nigerian or non-Nigerian, you come in, you have to scan your passport, and it's linked to a database at the control and command and control center at the service headquarters, being monitored day and night, every day, 24/7. And we also have the API and the PNR. What that does is that we pull information from the airlines before passengers even board. It's an interactive system where before you even come into the country, we know who's coming in. So we know that you're a person of interest, or we know that you're a person who is suspicious, or who has a funny attitude, or we don't want, you know, or you're a person of interest, let me just use that word. Then we let the airline know that this person is not allowed to board, is not allowed to come into the country. So we have that, we pre-profile passengers before they even come into the country. So that's another level in terms of border control, in terms of border governance. So we are not just knowing who's coming in, but we have the ability to say, listen, this person is a person of interest, or this person is wanted in this place or this country. So do not, or we even look at travel plans as well, travel history. Where has he been to? Has he, you know, people coming from Brazil or from Colombia, you know that there's a pattern there. So we also have the ability to check your travel pattern. So that is what we're doing now. That is the system we have now, the border information system.
Is the command and control center functional as at today, though? 123 trained.
Yes.
Are they posted? Are they deployed? And is the command and control center up and running?
Up and running, not yet, in a couple of weeks. Because first of all, before you man such things, you must train them properly. These are data analysts. They must know how to read the information. How do you know what to escalate? How do you know where to direct informations to? So these are the training that's going on. We inducted about 123 officers yesterday, and they're going to the next phase of training, which is done in conjunction with ICAO and IATA and other agencies. So this is what's going on right now. And the training is going to go on for another week or 2 weeks. And then hopefully then we start, we become operational.
Thank you very much,
yes.
Comptroller General Kemi Nandap, for your response to that question. But I want to get back to Dr. Agomo now, because the correctional centers, facilities, seem to have quite a number of issues, and the immigration seems to be a bit settled, in the whole ministry. So we hope the correction.
Another minister have promised us it's going to be settled soon.
Yeah,
Don't worry.
in talking about settling the correctional facility, I still want you to let us know what it's like, for the inmates. You talked about the feeding, the maltreatment, and all of that. But what about medical facility? Are there medical facilities in correctional? Hold on, just a minute. Are there medical facilities, that can cater, for the needs of these inmates medically? Because I've seen reports of people who are being freed or granted bail for medical reasons. So I'm wondering if there's a medical facility that is up and running in the centers. They should be taken care of in there. That's one. Then two. We're talking about the overcrowding issue. At the moment, as of September, the report says that 3,590 inmates are on death row in the country. 3,590. That's a huge number. The last time an execution was carried out, or a death warrant was carried out for the execution of an inmate on death row, was in 2016. And that was by the former governor of Edo State. 2016 to 2024. It looks like the governors are not willing to sign the death warrants of these inmates. Should there be another way out? Because, I mean, this is another form of, keeping people there and complicating issues for the correctional facilities. I want to hear your take.
Okay, so there are two issues you brought to the table now. One is about medical, the other one is about death row. I'm going to speak on both. So first, in terms of the medical, I wouldn't be wrong to say almost every, or the greatest and a lot of the correctional centers do have sick bays, yeah? So you do have a particular...
Are there facilities? Are there personnel?
They have, sometimes, sometimes you have a clinic, sometimes you have, it's of course of different grades, of different structure. And then of course, it's something to have a facility, but it's also a different thing to have all of the appropriate drugs that you require, all of the appropriate specialization in terms of medical that you require. So there are facilities that you have that are clinics. Now, the question, therefore, is that what are the services that are able to be provided in those facilities? There are also some few correctional centers that have almost like a little bit upgraded, I don't know what I call it, it's almost like an upgraded hospital. There are not many of them. But the point I want us to see, it can always be improved on. There are a lot of inmates. If you talk about number, that's why the issue of number is always a big issue. Because no matter what you are providing, if you overstretch because of number, it becomes a problem. The second thing is how many of the professionals are you attracting into the service? How much of the appropriate drugs do those persons have access to? And this is also another opportunity, and I'm going to use this opportunity really to call out to, almost different professional groupings, clinical psychologists, medical doctors, psychiatrists, different other professions. They can begin to look at, especially in the medical space, yeah? Begin to look at what can be done to provide service. I'll give you one just example. Let's talk about mental health. Section 24 of the Nigerian Correctional Service Act of 2019 talks about mental health review board. And this is because the regime that is running the mental health processing of inmates is based on lunacy law, the olden days. But the Nigerian Correctional Service of 2019 came in to bring some levels of reform around it. Members of the Mental Health Review Board was at least, I believe, inaugurated virtually on the 25th of August 2022, but haven't been able to begin to implement that role. So the question, therefore, is, and in terms of mental health, and I want to say this, apart from the fact that there are some facilities that have asylums, you find out that you don't have appropriate professionals to deal with that. Appropriate training for correctional officers in terms of handling mental health. Though there is now a protocol, but it needs to be fully entrenched. So the question is that, is it possible that those who are professionals within the mental health space, National Association of Clinical Psychologists, Association of Psychiatrists in Nigeria, and all of that, to come to an end? Because every place where you have the correctional centers, there will be their members. Is there something that can be worked around that? And that could be other things. So the response to your issue on medical is that a lot still needs to be done around that space to ensure that we have proper access to health for every inmate, proper access, and that the appropriate drugs and all the rest of that happens to be provided. And again, that's part of what the minister was also talking about, the holistic reform area. That's also one area that will also be looked at.
Okay, so on the death row.
Yeah, that's the next thing I want to talk about. The question about death row, first of all, you need to understand that there is a UN moratorium on death, on executions. And what he has said is that countries should not execute, and there is a reason for that. We have found a lot of errors, even in countries like the United States. They found out with DNA, a lot of people who you have found to be guilty and had killed, they found out that people were innocent. More so, the kind of system that we have. So, when you find persons who you put in death row, what we have currently is that you have a process whereby, for example, through the prerogative of mercy committees, both at the Presidential Committee on Prerogative of Mercy and the state committees on prerogative of mercy, sometimes people who are on death row can be reviewed. Depending on the situation, they may be put to be a lifer. Okay? Because if somebody is a lifer, it's actually easier. You're not killing the person until the way the person is, unless another process comes and the person is able to get out, depending on if the criteria the person has met. So it is not something right for Nigeria to be executing. And this is key. If because of that monitoring and because of the fact that a lot of the errors have been made. So I think that when we are looking at reducing the number of persons who are in custody, the question is not about going to kill them, it's about life. What of the people where you find that error? And there have been a lot coming out of that space. So what we need to do is a question of being able to look at all of the cases, including the cases that are death row. What are those ones that are qualified to be lifers and the rest of that? And this is really the point I'm going to make at this particular moment. Because we have found that countries that have capitalization, when you say capitalization, that's the countries that are currently executing people. It has not reduced the severity of certain offenses in terms of those countries. So it doesn't make it easier for that country. Rather, the other way around.
In other words, it shouldn't be the way to go. Not at least not awful.
Not to kill. No. I wouldn't recommend that Nigeria.
I'm sure that's why the governors, of course, don't want to sign all of that. But I think you have made a good recommendation. I'd like to get to the Honourable Minister now, and I want you to look at the fire service. Like the immigration, I said earlier, immigration, of course, seems to be standing on 4 legs. Correctional service, maybe 2 legs. The fire service, maybe no leg at all. So I want you to tell, I hear that there's this, you're trying to, you want to do something about the Act of 1963? So tell us about, what your reforms are in the Nigerian fire service. Because, a lot of Nigerians, many do not even know that it still exists based on how it functions.
Thank you. So first thing about fire service is we have to understand that act, it's an act of 1963, and it's about fire service. And I sincerely believe it should be fire and rescue service, because all over the world, rescue is at the center of it. Fire service all over the world is not.
But the Senate is kicking against that change, right?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I'm not to the best of not to my knowledge, because it's the convention all over the world. For instance, I was in Maiduguri during the flood, and I didn't see, and I told the CG Fire, I didn't see fire service officers rescuing people. When you go to the UK, when there's hurricane, there is flood, there is whatever, it's the fire service that you see, rescuing people, emergency medical services, EMS is a function of fire service, So there's a lot. We're trying to reform that in line with global best practice.
But someone will want to question all of that reform, because now that it is just the fire service, we don't see its capacity. We don't see. Now when you
cannot, because a child is finding it difficult to talk, assume that the child should never talk. All right, you can't assume so. That they're struggling at the moment does not mean that with the right reforms, that is the essence of reform. And to the best of my knowledge, Nigeria is a country of optimists, but not a country of pessimists. So pessimism is not in the dictionary of Nigerians. So for me, we're optimistic people. This is something that must work. This is an agency that affects me. This is an agency that affects you, okay, that affects all Nigerians. So we want the fire service. The act needs to be repealed, not even amended, repealed and, enacted. We need to enact a new fire and rescue service act. That's number one. And number two thing is that another thing we saw was that we got to the fire academy. It was nothing to write home about. And today, if you go there in Sheda, you'll see massive construction work going on. Within the next 1 year, we're going to be done, and we're creating the best. And I'm telling you, in terms of infrastructure, in terms of facility, we're creating the best fire academy we have in West Africa, right there. Because the era when you see private organizations, some oil and gas companies, banks, and etc., sending their officers abroad for firefighting and rescue training, we think that money should be here. We should be able to retain such funds here. We should create an academy. And next week we're going to be in the UK. We'll have on the invitation of the Home Office in the UK, and we're collaborating with the fire service in the UK. We'll be in Liverpool. What's it called, National Resilience Center of Excellence in Liverpool. We'll be on Motor March, which is the Fire Academy. So we are also obviously forming that level of partnership with the United Kingdom to be able to build a fire and rescue service that Nigerians will be proud of. And also another thing that's also important that we're working on is even the communication, something as basic as communication. Nigerians, once there's an emergency, Nigerians should be able to get in touch with fire service like now. There must be dedicated, not just dedicated, like there must be that easy toll-free access. So we're trying to work on this, so that obviously the response system. And I have also told them that in terms of their expenditure, they really need to sit down and look at what's done all over the world. Today now, with certain minor drones, and with payloads, lot of firefighting is done all over the world. We have to look at technology in that regard. And one other thing that is very critical that I think we need, it's the issue of opening up the space for private sector participation. Let's be objective about it. Government alone cannot be in charge of firefighting. You can't be the only provider of solution. We must open the space for the private sector to participate. Why did I say that? I'll give you an example. When you go to the banks, you see security officers. It's not every day that armed robbers will come to the bank. But there are security officers there to make sure. Yes, because you're trying to be proactive, But when you go to most of our commercial centers in Nigeria, you do not see any officer that is even trained, that is even a fire and rescue service officer. That's why, for instance, give me a reason why you put 100 people, 200 people, you run hotels or you run commercial activities, and you do not even have somebody that is trained, not just on firefighting, but even on rescue and emergency service management. If somebody faints, you saw what happened during the ministerial screening National Assembly when one of our colleagues fainted. At that particular point in time, he could have died. When I was chairman NDDC and there was the probe, I could remember that Professor Ponde fainted, and had to be rushed to hospital. That is because the National Assembly Hospital was nearby. Just assume that the hospital is not, like it's a market, like Wuse Market or Balogun Market or somewhere. So we sincerely think that we must be proactive. We must see saving of life must be a priority. You understand? And in doing that, it's not, to me, the best doctor is not a man who treats an ailment, but a man who helps you to prevent an ailment. So we as government, we have to be proactive, and that's what we're trying to do. So how do we open the space? How do we now allow Nigerians to be able to run fire service should be the responsibility of fire service in real sense. They should be regulators of the industry, but the law does not give them that power yet. That's why they cannot regulate. The fire service should also be a trainer, because what fire service should do is to train people on firefighting, on emergency management, on rescue, train people, and these people, and you certify them, as professionals. Then banks, markets, malls, hospitals, and we now recruit these people. By doing that, you also create job. You create a new line of career. You understand? So we believe that there is a lot to be done. We're choking the economy, we're choking the whole system, instead of us opening up new career opportunities for people.
And the Fire Academy?
Yeah, and that's why we are building the Fire Academy now. And our plan is within the next 1 month. And we want to thank Mr. President for supporting us to build the Fire Academy. I tell you, when we give our word, we keep it. In the next 1 year, rather, we will be commissioning the Fire Academy. Okay. And once we finish that, that's the national. We hope to be able to replicate that, at least for now, in every region. Once we do it, 6 in every region, make it 7, then we'll start till we get to every state, such that, because imagine the number. Let me give you an instance before I go. Imagine the number of jobs we can create. Realistically, consider the number of non-residential buildings we have in Nigeria. Imagine the number of markets we have in Nigeria. Imagine the number of banks, schools, churches, companies, and all these commercial ventures. You cannot tell me to come lodge in your hotel when if anything happens to me in the middle of the night. There's nobody that can provide
Rescue.
that immediate assistance. That's what fire service should do. So that's why it should be called fire and rescue. And we believe that this will create jobs, not just create jobs, create a new career path. And
But
at
what's
the end of
holding
the day-
that up? You were a lawmaker, and so it should be easier for you to navigate
No, that's
the lawmaking process.
And I have to tell you, we've been getting great support from the National Assembly. We hope that once we're able to, let me just say this before we go, and it's very critical I say this. You see, by repealing and enacting a new Fire and Rescue Service Act, I tell you, it will be like opening of the gate for the whole process, because you are only as strong as the law wants you to be strong, and you are who the law says you are. Even if today the fire service wants to work, the law has not given
Has
them.
restricted it. Thank you so much, Honorable Minister. We do sincerely appreciate it. But unfortunately, we're out of time. You know, it looks like we're going to have you come again, you know, very soon.
We haven't talked about the NSCDC, by the way.
Exactly. The NSCDC is there. And really, I would have loved to ask the CG what she's doing, you know, to deal with those who are corrupt within the service. Because, you know, all the reforms, you know, what you're doing as CG, what the minister is doing. But it looks like there's still some bad eggs, you know, trying to give the immigration
Just
service.
like you always have anywhere.
Yes, but at least you need to reduce them to the barest minimum. So I'm sure you're looking in that regard, and of course, you know, give your service a clean name, just like the clean name of the Honourable Minister of Interior, Olubunmi Tinjojo. Always a pleasure to have you. Thank you so much. Looking forward to having, you know, more engagement with you. Very insightful. Thank you so much for the work that you're doing. Also, the Comptroller General, Nigerian Immigration Service, Kemi Nanda. Thank you so much for being our guest.
Thank you.
Wish you all the best, and of course, we hope that the Immigration Service will continue to do great, like it's doing at the moment.
Absolutely.
Dr. Oju Agomo, Executive Director, Prisoners Rehabilitation and Welfare Action, Power. Congratulations, 30 years, you say. We rejoice with you. Of course, member United Nations Subcommittee on Prevention of Torture, Associate Professor of Criminology and Security Studies, Chrisland University of Abuja. Thank you so much for being our guest.
Thank you.
And continue the good work that you're doing. We hope our correctional service becomes very correct, like they say. All right, so I'm Yanwe John. That's our package this Tuesday. Remain tuned to the NTA.
All right, and I'm Victor. So we'll see you again tomorrow. Let's keep the date.